Next on Reboot Your Life.
A leading neuroscientist explains how virtually anybody can remove negative patterns through several easy steps. Plus, a best-selling author explains why emotions should be taught at the school level.
It's next. From Riverside Recovery, it's Reboot Your Life. Experience the ultimate reboot of your journey. Start anew and rediscover you. Transform your story. Rewrite your life. It's Reboot Your Life with Cary Harrison.
And from the Riverside Recovery Studios in Tampa, Florida, Cary Harrison with you. And thanks for joining us on Reboot Your Life, where we help you get back the life you love. Well, Americans spend billions of dollars on self-improvement, and we're all searching for a better way. Some people are born with built-in amazing skill sets, and others are learning by trial and error, like me. Dr. John McGrail is not just a hypnotherapist, a success coach, and spirituality teacher, but after 30 years' experience, he's developed Synthesis, a powerful process for creating rapid and profound personal change. His book, The Synthesis Effect, has been widely featured on both radio and TV. And from New Hampshire, Dr. John McGrail, welcome to Reboot Your Life.
Good morning, Cary. Nice to be with you today.
We're glad to have you aboard. I know you pop between LA and here and there, East Coast, West Coast. So you're on the West Coast right now, which means you have I have no idea. I'm not going to say that. Renee, I'm just going to pick it back up again at Dr. John McGrail. Welcome, okay? And put my brain back in my skull. Featured on both radio and TV. And from New Hampshire, Dr. John McGrail. Welcome to Reboot Your Life.
Good morning, Cary. Nice to be with you.
Glad to have you aboard. Now, maybe you could share with us, Dr. John McGrail, the synthesis effect. What exactly is this?
Well, of course, it's the title of my book, as you mentioned, but the effect of using this process is learning how to live your life virtually free of suffering. I mean, you can never get rid of everything, but it's amazing in a very short period of time and profoundly, you can, as you say, reboot your life so that you virtually eliminate suffering from it.
Well, you're also a hypnotherapist. We're all familiar with, let's say, the TV or movie versions of hypnosis. But in real life, it's quite a different discipline.
Well, there's a big difference between hypnotherapy and stage hypnosis. What a lot of people don't understand is that hypnosis in and of itself is simply a state of consciousness, a natural state of consciousness that, by the way, we all experience every day. Quickly, anytime you watch a good movie or a TV show and you get absorbed and you have an emotional response to it, you've actually been in a form of hypnosis. Or you zone out driving and you get where you're going and you don't remember how you got there. You've been in what's called highway hypnosis. Hypnotherapy is using that state of consciousness on purpose to help facilitate change, because when we are in hypnosis, we have direct contact with what we call the subconscious part of the mind, which is where most of our behaviors, habits, emotions, etc., emanate from. And we can get into that a little bit more, but your subconscious is like a computer, metaphorically. Once it's programmed, good or bad, it'll play those programs happily over and over again. And unfortunately, a lot of us get stuck in what we would call negative patterns. Hypnotherapy helps change that quickly and profoundly.
So maybe I'm guessing here with synthesis, we're going to get into what that is right now. Once we take some of these established patterns, replace them with better ones, then your brain starts playing the better ones as opposed to the not better ones. And that's a real win for someone.
Precisely. A lot of people don't realize that everything we think, do, say, and feel is the result of a choice. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like life is happening to us, but we are literally choosing our reality every day. And most of that reality is chosen subconsciously. We're not aware of it. We don't feel badly on purpose. It just happens. So if we want to change the way our computers work on our desks, we have to reprogram them. The same thing happens with the human mind. Behavioral scientists don't like the concept of a computer, but it, metaphorically speaking, helps people understand how they get into these situations, these patterns that are holding them back. And I basically say, we're going to take the buggy software out of your brain and put the new software in. It's oversimplified, of course, but that's the gist of it.
And hence the name of the show, Reboot Your Life. I mean, really, everything is a computer since Windows 95, which never worked. But we like to think we're on Apple here, or at least the latest iteration of Windows, because in fact, we are the software we're programmed with. We are the hardware we're handed, and we do upgrade the software by choice. And I think that's the key, is the people listening and watching, if they're watching on Spotify right now, the video version at least, we're going to be able to see what you're talking about with synthesis. Help us understand. Tim is depressed. Tim is a recovering alcoholic. How does synthesis help him?
Well, first of all, synthesis is, if you look at the word, it is the act of taking disparate ingredients, putting them together in a special way to create a stronger whole, which is why I came up with the term. It was originally called psychoneurosynthesis, but that's really long and hard. So I just shortened it to synthesis. So when we have issues like depression and whatever it is, there's a reason for it. It has a learned response. Nobody is born that way. We may have a genetic predilection for it, but we have to learn our habits, good and bad. And so synthesis is just using a variety of tools, techniques, methods, and traditions, bringing those together for each and every client to help create this new version of you, a better you, which is the name of my company. Hypnosis is a big part of it. Meditation is a big part of it. And there are other models and metaphors that I develop that just help people get there really quickly.
So I'm guessing synthesis would help anyone benefit from pretty much anything they're going through. Let's break down some of the components of synthesis so that people can wrap their head around it, so it's not too out there, like bunches of things that are working together. What are some of the things that are working?
Well, as I mentioned already, hypnosis is a big part of it because it is a tool that helps us create change quickly and profoundly. Meditation is a very big part of it because meditation helps maintain changes systemically. So you take hypnosis, which helps things happen quickly, and you combine it with meditation, a very similar feeling, by the way, but they affect different parts of the mind. And those two working together create change quickly and then help people maintain it systemically. As I mentioned, I also developed a variety of tools and more models, I guess you'd say, to help my clients and students understand how we get to be the way we are, how the mind works, because most of us don't understand it. And with that understanding comes power. There's an old saying, knowledge is power. I also help them realize that there's nothing wrong with them. We feel like there's something wrong with us. Why can't I, whatever, fill in the blank? It's just the way we learn and are programmed at a very early age. It is childhood, whether we like it or not. That's where we are formed. By the time we're 8 years old, we are pretty much the people we're going to be, and then we develop into those people. And so it's a combination of creating understanding, providing tools and techniques. Neuro-linguistic programming is another big part of it, which is just another way of helping us understand how and why we behave the way we do, bringing them together in just the right way, and that's the art of it, so that a person can create the change and transformation they desire. And what I like to say is live the life of their dreams instead of the one they thought they were stuck with.
Or the ones that their parents demanded that they be stuck with. But don't think you're stuck with it. Just know that's your life. You don't have choices. There's no path in any other direction. This is who you will be. Have a nice day. We're sending you to school for it, which is the story of many people. And then they find out that they can actually reboot, relearn, make their own decisions, have personal agency, which is a giant breakthrough for people.
It is amazing how we succumb to the expectations and standards of others. And again, very often it is the act of well-meaning but often misinformed people. I share a great story very early in the book about a young law student that I met who came to me because he, quote, couldn't pass the bar exam. He had tried twice and couldn't pass. He came from one of the best law schools in the country, top of his class. There was no reason on earth that he couldn't pass until about 15 minutes into our first session, I discovered that he didn't want to be an attorney. He wanted to be a chef, but his family were attorneys. They had a big law firm, and every generation from grandpa coming off the great-grandfather off the Mayflower till now. So you're going to be an attorney. So once I found that out, I said, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to help you pass the bar just so you can do it. And then I'm going to help you build the courage to tell your family that you're going to culinary school. And that's exactly what happened. As you might imagine, his parents were apoplectic when he told them that he wasn't going to practice law and join the firm. And then when he went to culinary school and now is a celebrity chef, I can't mention names for confidentiality, and has a chain of restaurants all over the world that are just, Michelin level restaurants, his mom and dad are just absolutely delighted. But at the time, that's exactly what happens. And so often that happens to us. We are the victims of other people's expectations. One of the things we do with Synthesis is do exactly that. We help people say, hey, my life is my responsibility. My outcomes are my responsibility. I'm going to take that responsibility and live it to the fullest. And that is when you are, as a fellow in Ireland said to me one day in Dublin, now you're sucking diesel, lad. That's when life really gets to be fun. And that's rule number one in my methodology. Life is supposed to be fun.
And Auntie Mame said that too, didn't she? Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers don't even, I forget the rest of it, but famous quote, Rosalind Russell. It's interesting. When I was probably 14 or 15, and my father was dealing with acute alcoholism and going to rehab for the first time, I was in Alateen, which is Al-Anon for teenagers, and sort of getting some basic rudimentary understanding of what a recovery program might look like. And the guy talking to me was the former head of a giant bank in Chicago, which is no longer there. It's been bought 100 times since, but he was the dude. So you can imagine, this is a man of extreme power, of knowledge, education, all of this stuff, talking to me, a little 14-year-old. And he said, you know what I did to get sober? And I said, no. I mean, how would I know? I didn't even really understand what that meant. He said, well, they wanted me to be a banker, and I was raised, and I went to, Harvard and this and that, and did everything right, and became the top of the top in this world of what I do. He said, but you know what I'm going to do now? He said, I quit my job at the bank. He said, I'm going to go drive a bulldozer in Idaho. He said, you want to know why? Of course I want to know why. He said, because I've always wanted to drive a bulldozer, and I'm going to be a really good bulldozer driver.
There you go.
And I thought, wow, if a guy like that is willing to give up all of the bells and whistles and public persona and the money and the cocktail parties and all the madness that goes, the freight, the weight of having to carry all of that with you every day. When you're at that level of power, you don't just go home and be quiet. You have to show up at every symphony, whatever. He just wants to ride a bulldozer so he'll be happy and he doesn't have to drink. And that is something he was never taught, but it's something he discovered.
Exactly. One of my favorite quotes of all time was coined by a fellow named Christopher Morley, who was a writer and philosopher, and back in the late 18th century into the mid 19th century. I think he died in the mid 50s. The guy's really quite eccentric, and he's worth looking up. But he said, there is only one success: to be able to live your life in your own way. And if you think about that, it is so profound. Most of us don't do that. Most of us succumb to the expectations of others or society or what we're supposed to do. And we focus on what's not working. But when you take the courage, if you will, to decide to live your life in your own way, like this gentleman did, then you are a complete success. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with how many houses or toys or whatever you accumulated. It has nothing to do with power. It has to do with that feeling at the end of the day that, boy, I really enjoyed myself today. And that's what my rule number one is about: helping people find their fun, whatever it is. It doesn't mean an endless series of hedonistic parties. And I mean, that would be ridiculous. But when you get up in the morning, you look forward to the day, you like the way you're doing your life, you like the choices you're making, the relationships you have, the people you associate with. Hopefully you love, whether it's a bulldozer digging ditches or doing what we do, you love doing what you do to put food on the table. And it just makes life so enjoyable. And that's what Synthesis and the Synthesis effect is all about: helping people find their fun.
Cary Harris with you. We are talking to Dr. John McGrail, internationally known hypnotherapist, success coach, and spirituality teacher, whose 30-year mission evolved into a book and a process called Synthesis, a powerful process for creating rapid and profound personal change. Here on Reboot Your Life, you can also watch this video on Spotify. You can catch this audio on every single platform out there. And as we wrap up the conversation, Dr. McGrail, how quickly can someone overcome challenges like chronic stress, something I think most, if you're alive today, maybe you relate to that, chronic stress, anxiety, any of these things using synthesis?
Well, it's different for everybody, obviously, because every mind is different. Everybody comes from different backgrounds and has different sensibilities. But I can tell you this, if a person truly wants to make the change and they're committed to themselves and doing the work, because it's not magic. It feels magical. It can happen extremely quickly. Stress and anxiety are two of probably the number one issues I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I have clients literally all over the country and all over the world. And I can say with authority, based on my experience, that most of my clients are with me from about 3 to 6 weeks. And by that time, if they've committed to doing the work, they have created the change, they feel fantastic, and I give them the tools to use to maintain that new feeling so that they can not have to depend on me or anybody else. Now, everybody needs tune-ups from time to time, but the truth of the matter is this process works quickly and profoundly. I can't say 1 or 2 sessions, but most of my clients are with me no longer than 3 to 6 sessions.
Which is unusual in that many therapists, 5 years, 6 years, they don't exactly fire you or lay you off. But if you can see a therapist and if you're doing the work and it's 6 weeks or so, you've significantly evolved and then can go off and do it on your own. I mean, that is something certainly worth knowing about. It's 30 years in the game with you, so you had to discover there are actual routes that can get people to that end, and then you can release them to go off and have better lives. So that sounds like a real win for a therapist.
It is, and it's incredibly satisfying. And I think traditional therapy is great, and it works really, really well for lots of people. But as you mentioned, for lots of people, it doesn't. They just go every week, year after month after month, year after year, and nothing ever gets done. And I think one of the reasons that happens is, well, there are many, but talk therapy works at the conscious level. And that is about 10% of the human mind. 90% of the human mind is operating subconsciously. That's where most of our stuff comes from, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if you want to change the ugly and the bad, you have to work at that level. And that's what these techniques do. And I think that's a good reason why so many people get such great results so quickly.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today here on Reboot Your Life. We've been talking to Dr. John McGrail, internationally known hypnotist, success coach, spirituality teacher, whose 30-year mission evolved into a book and a process called Synthesis, a powerful process for creating rapid and profound personal change.
Hang on, your reboot reboots in a moment.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/act now.
Riverside Recovery of Tampa was created to offer state-of-the-art treatment options to people suffering from addiction. The model was developed to meet clients and their families where they're at and provide them with the tools and education needed so that they can achieve long-term recovery. No two people are the same, and no two people have the same experience with addiction. And it is for this reason that we tailor each treatment plan to the unique needs of each individual. Located alongside the Hillsborough River in the heart of Tampa, Riverside Recovery offers the full continuum of care. And what that means is that we offer medical detoxification, residential care, day treatment, intensive outpatient, and outpatient levels of care. The program at Riverside is focused on high-quality clinical care offered in a safe, comfortable, and serene environment where everyone feels empowered to change the course of their lives. The stigma that surrounds addiction continues to be high on the list of reasons that people don't seek help. At Riverside Recovery, we're working to change the narrative and empower people to recognize addiction as a disease, not a moral failing. We can recover, and we do, as evidenced by the thousands of people who have taken that courageous first step in asking for help. The staff at Riverside understand what it's like to recover. In fact, over 75% of our staff are in long-term recovery. So if you or someone you know needs help and are ready to seek treatment, call Riverside Recovery of Tampa at 1-800-871-5440. That's 800-871-5440. You can learn more about the treatment we provide at rrtampa.com. Again, that's rrtampa.com.
Life 2.0. It's your life and your reboot. It's Reboot Your Life with Cary Harrison.
And from the Riverside Recovery Studios in Tampa, Florida, Cary Harrison with you. And thanks for joining us on Reboot Your Life, where we help you get back the life you love. Well, much of recovery and life's daily battles have to do with interpersonal relationships. Whether you have a roommate or looking to date at some point, or have even entered into a more disciplined recovery regimen where you are more consciously seeking valuable relationships, well, you're going to meet a renowned relationship expert now, best-selling author and former Mrs. Ohio. Now, that's noteworthy because it means she's a grown-up who's actually been in a long-term relationship. From sharing pages with the great Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, to unraveling the myth of a one-size-fits-all formula for success in relationships, she's an author. Victoria Lowry dives into the essence of success, guiding us through the pivotal attributes of vision, risk-taking, and perseverance, teaching emotional intelligence. Now, that's something key that we don't often hear about, teaching emotional intelligence during these difficult times. Victoria Lowry, welcome to Reboot Your Life.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, so many people are in recovery from this and from that. How do you believe that emotions play a pivotal role in unlocking anybody's true potential?
Oh, it is the foremost thing in my mind. I always say that, Star Trek says space is the final frontier. I always say inner space is the real final frontier, because that's how important it is. I see what we're studying in schools. We focus on the science, technology, engineering, and math. That acronym is STEM. And to me, if your emotions aren't solid and in place, that's going to impact everything else, right? So to me, we need to adjust that acronym to STEAM. If we could put one word in place to hold all these things that you're talking about and rebooting your life, like empathy and emotional skills management, anger management, we'll just call that emotions. And so if we add that to the acronym, then we call that STEAM. So our core courses should be science, technology, engineering, emotions, and math.
Now, this is kind of a radical idea because, at least my experience in school, was no emotion. Star Trek, once again, Mr. Spock, not Dr. McCoy.
Yes, yes.
But really, Dr. McCoy was onto something, wasn't he?
Emotions, that's everything, because if you get a block emotionally, that's going to affect your whole life. If you're having a rough time at home, that's going to carry over into the workplace. That's just the way it works. Much of my career, I left my Chamber of Commerce Executives of Ohio was an organization I was CEO of back in 2011. And I left that because I felt so motivated to talk about emotions. And so from that viewpoint, going back to where I was sitting in boardrooms with all these really smart, accomplished people, my mind would go to, well, why is this person's opinion being more heard more easily? Why is this one expressing themselves better? If someone is having a bad day at home, if they're blocked up about how they are, their position in life, they're not going to express themselves as well in the boardroom. That then affects decisions that are made in the boardroom, that affects the direction of the companies that we interact with. Those are the community we live in. It affects ourselves, our humanity as a whole. The same thing that happens in the political arena when we have senators and congressmen and they're making decisions. What agenda is driving them deepest down inside? Those subtle things that we cannot see, that you can see how that affects the outcome of the whole life that we live in. It's huge.
Victoria Lowry, I have to think that, much of this discovery, of course, led you to sharing pages with Jack Canfield, one of the most celebrated names in the industry of enlightenment and awareness. You transitioned from a successful career in journalism, which meant you actually studied the human condition. So this is a different way. We bring on a lot of different psychotherapists, psychologists, neuroplasticity experts, et cetera, et cetera. They also learn about the human condition, but you actually watch how people model relationships, how they undo whole systems for personal benefit as a journalist. I know, because I am one. So I think it gives you a unique perspective into understanding how emotions come into play and how maybe in the political arena, you can manipulate thousands of people's emotions to get one thing done, not being used for the good. But when used for the good, extraordinarily positive things can happen.
Absolutely. And that's what we want. And we can't control who each individual was and and we don't want to, because we're all so unique, but to actually focus on emotions. So a person has these skills. Like Denmark is considered one of the happiest places in the world to live. And they have empathy classes in their school. They're known for their empathy classes. And just that one simple emotion, and there are so many, but just talking about that one, if we have more empathy with who each of us is in the world, just imagine having a really strong sense of empathy in every single person that was making our leadership decisions. That, just think how much that affects the outcome of those decisions. Because sometimes you get closed off in your worldview, your personal preferences come into play, but we have to think on a world picture, I think, because that we really are all on one planet and we all need each other. So we really have to think that way.
Do you think that, we would all love to affect our politicians, maybe overnight, but that's maybe not going to happen so quickly.
Yeah.
But at a smaller level, you and me, using the Gandhi formula, you have to create the world that you want to live in. If we start doing this with each other, have empathy for each other, listening to each other, feeling what someone else is going through, understanding it, appreciating it, is that going to start to change things?
That is perfect. And Gandhi is an excellent example. Yes, because he walked the walk, right? He wasn't out there using force and trying to force new systems. He lived his life by example. And his example was so strong and so powerful that millions of other people, to this day, we still talk about Gandhi, and he's still an example for us. So absolutely, each one of us has that choice every single day to make that choice, to learn to. But the thing is where are these tools? Where do we learn these things? So, your show's certainly a great way. And we just have to keep doing more and more of that. We're not necessarily born. We have to learn science. We have to learn emotions. We're not necessarily taught how to deal with anger, how to process, to know that gratitude is a huge superpower. That just by being grateful for things can turn around a bad day. If you're having a horrible day, start thinking about everything that you're grateful for, and that will just turn it around. There's so many tools like that can change the quality of the life that we live. Why wouldn't we want to share those tools with everyone?
Yeah, to be able to teach them in school and say, look, right, Timmy, you may be in a bad mood, but you have to be in one of the better schools. You've got a soccer field that's 17 acres surrounded by woods and a lake. unlike most other people, whatever it is. But it's that glass half full versus half empty. And if you see it half full, it's amazing how you can then strive for the next level up. And Timmy can then become a superstar because he's got self-esteem now. He understands, he realizes that he's coming from a place with some abundance and some creative force, and somebody's got his back, as opposed to the empty side. But it has to be taught. You're right. It's not given away in school. What's given away in school, at least when I went to school, was if you read this and study that and get an A, we're going to be nice to you. And then we're going to let you get to the next grade, or you're going to sit in the corner. Well, that's a threat. Like, oh, that sounds like fun. Bring it on.
Yeah, the negative things, right? The negative things are our education. And that, yes, we want to see the glass half full, but also we're all going to have those experiences that are hurtful, that are painful. But if you can switch your mindset to see what is the learning in here for me, because every single one of those experiences can elevate us to a higher level. But when are we really shown how to truly do that? A lot of us try to figure these things out as adults, as things currently are. But if we can switch that mindset, okay, the glass is half empty right now, but what am I taking from this to elevate myself? Then you switch it over to the glass half full. That's important.
Cary Harrison with you. This is Reboot Your Life. We're talking to Victoria Lowry, renowned as a relationship expert, a best-selling author, and a motivational speaker with a commitment to teaching emotional understanding and empowerment. From authoring a book alongside Jack Canfield to a CEO running a chamber of commerce of executives, she teaches emotional intelligence during these difficult times. The founder of AA, Bill Wilson, and many others realized later in their lives that the one thing left to conquer was this emotional intelligence, this emotional sobriety, which is such an elusive and amorphous concept to many of us. We can behave properly or correctly, but emotionally, we may not understand what we're even doing. If we emotionally understand what we're doing, then our decisions would follow in order, and you wouldn't have to go fix everything all the time.
Right. It's the root, it's the base of everything. So it's just so important. And imagine if you could physically see that, if you could physically see the shadow. I think that's what that's kind of what I encompass. All these emotions are things that are in our shadow side of ourself. Carl Jung kind of just coined that term. But that's what makes these things complicated, I think, because emotions aren't something that we can see. We only really feel it. And it's much harder for us to accept and understand things that we can't see. And, emotions are they're very powerful. They're there affecting us every single day, but we can't see them.
Your yes test is what you call it. The yes test in evaluating the strength of a partnership. Boy, would people like to know about that.
It's very popular, I will say that. And it's simply 9 questions, because I go by the KISS model of life, keep things simple. So it's 9 questions answered with a yes or a no. And if you get all yes answers, then it is your green light for a long-term relationship. It's going to tell you that you have the makings for a long-term relationship. So it's very simple.
And how do you help people discover their unique success formula on the road to fulfilling their goals and their relationships?
It goes back to listening to yourself. If there's one bottom line for everything, it's just listening to that voice inside. And not necessarily are we encouraged to do that in life. And that's where your joy is found. I think the vision that we see, the goals that we have, the dreams that we have, those are our blueprint for what each of us uniquely is meant to do. And making it okay to listen to that voice is so powerful, and believe in it and follow your joy. That's where you're going to be so happy, is if you follow that vision of what your soul is telling you want to do.
Riverside Recovery of Tampa was created to offer state-of-the-art treatment options to people suffering from addiction. The model was developed to meet clients and their families where they're at. At Riverside Recovery, we're working to change the narrative and empower people to recognize addiction as a disease, not a moral failing. We can recover, and we do, as evidenced by the thousands of people who have taken that courageous first step in asking for help. Call Riverside Recovery of Tampa at 1-800-871-5440. That's 800-871-5440. rrtampa.com.
Tori Lowry, navigating the maze of modern interpersonal relationships. I mean, what else does anyone do all day anyway? Let's just be honest, right? So what are some of those secrets to avoiding what, and you call it, and I like this, it's the journalist in you, you call duds. Like fired in World War II, it's a dud. How do you avoid duds in order to foster enduring connections?
I think you're talking about my book, Don't Date a Dud, but yeah, it still goes back to ourselves, because we're not saying that there's a bunch of duds out there, but it's a matching thing in relationships. And what, you want to be able to match with the person that's right for you. Someone that, it doesn't mean that person's necessarily a dud, but for your relationship, it might fizzle out because you're not necessarily meant for each other. So the yes test is in that book. And it does ask questions like, would you still love him or her if their looks change for the worse? Questions like that, yes or no. So that those things give you a clue as to the longevity of your relationship. And, it's not that we're mad at someone if it doesn't work out. That's why we date, to see if we are a good match, if we want to continue in a long-term relationship. And if it does, good. And if it doesn't, great. We just have to kind of let go and go with the flow on that a little bit, I think.
And dating is sort of like squeezing a watermelon. They tell you there are 14 seeds in here, and unless you go squeeze it, oh, look at that. It's soft. It's got a bruise on one side. They didn't tell me that. So dating is really squeezing the melon, verifying whatever the information might be. And of course, if you're lucky, you learn pretty much everything you need to know up front. Maya Angelou famously said, whatever people tell you, believe them. Like in the first 10 minutes of knowing someone, they're going to pretty much lay out their whole world, their politics, everything. Maybe not directly, but indirectly. They're going to kind of tell you what they like, what they don't like, where the line is in the line, up. And you have to pay attention to that, because that is their very best courtship behavior when they just met you. That is going to be their A+. And from thereafter, well, you can't really depend on it. So you have to start paying attention to the red flags, I would think.
Yes, for sure. And that's an important thing to talk about. A lot of that's in the book. And like you said, listen to what someone says. Quite often when we don't, it's our own self-esteem that's coming from a place. And again, if we're going back and talking about emotions, and we're recognizing that not to let the negative experience beat you down, and, then we can keep our self-esteem in a place that we don't feel like we have to accept certain things that are unacceptable in a relationship behavior, even if we notice that red flag. Sometimes it's our own self blocking us, like, well, it's the best I can do, or, I just have to accept this because I've got faults too. We don't have to. We can each elevate each other. And it comes down to building our own self as strong as we can. We can't fix anyone else. And all we can do is continue over life of elevating ourselves. And to me, it's a joyous process. And you just keep feeling stronger and better all the time.
You have the nickname of the Love Lady. You're also Mrs. Ohio. So you have a long-term relationship versus Miss Ohio, maybe no relationships. So that's important to have that as a background. A lot of us have troubles with intimacy. We may not even know what that means, but we know that sentence somehow seems to fit. Maybe we're just kind of afraid of the commitment, or what happens if, and I don't know, 3 months from now, they might do this. So I'm just not going to really commit, and I'm going to waffle, and I'm going to dither. And you must deal with a lot of that with people, especially during these times with all the apps and the mayhem. People still get lonely like regular animals. We're dogs. We just want to be pet.
Unconditional love.
Yes.
For sure. Yes. That's why our pets are so amazing. They're such a great example of unconditional love. And we all want that. Yes. I tell you, a lot of times what it is just our own fear, right? It's just fear that gets in the way. And so that's what blocks us. And then if we're talking about emotions, fear is a very big one. And we get to recognize our own fear. We're fear of being hurt. We're fear of not looking strong. We're fear of looking stupid. We're all these fears that come in there, afraid of being alone, all those things. If we can actually have the awareness to notice that in ourselves, then it's no longer a block. Then it's something that we're aware of, we can see, and then it just kind of washes away after that. So yeah, just the more we talk about these emotions, fear being a huge one, that's going to be the biggest one blocking us in relationships to opening up to them. So yeah, we start recognizing the fear that is blocking us, then we're just open to this purest unconditional love.
And of course, open communication with your partner. That's a tough one. Right.
It is. And that's fear too. It's usually fear that comes in blocking our communication because we're afraid of saying something wrong and losing the love, or, whatever the fear is, or just maybe not feeling comfortable in it, because necessarily haven't been taught that communication is a good thing. We all have different levels of comfortability with communication. And the more we talk about it, the more we practice it. Like anything, if you're going to be, Michael Jordan or be some great sports star, it's a muscle. It's a muscle. We have to practice it and experience it and keep exercising that muscle. It's the same way with emotion. It's emotional skill. It's an emotional muscle. And we just want to keep practicing that every day. Imagine if we were in school having empathy classes every day. And a lot of our schools are doing some things. To me, we just can't do enough. So let's just keep doing more and more.
There are schools in Switzerland, for instance, and other places that are doing this kind of stuff because they have seen the success. They've seen nations like you mentioned, Denmark, the happiest place on earth. Well, that's only ranked by the people of Earth. It's not some poll that was taken in Arkansas. And so they're looking at the dynamics of how the government works and how they treat this people, and do they take care of that, or do they ignore and blow this off? So they are teaching it around. It would obviously catch on here because what a great success for America to really enjoy what we've built thus far. So it is such great food for thought. And I want to thank you for joining us today on Reboot Your Life.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for what you do.
Well, I love it, but then you love what you do. So you're the love lady. We'll love it together.
That's great. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Victoria Lowry, known as a relationship expert, best-selling author, and motivational speaker with a commitment to teaching emotional understanding and empowerment, from authoring a book alongside Jack Canfield to a CEO running a chamber commerce of executives. She teaches emotional intelligence during these difficult times. Cary Harrison with you. This is Reboot Your Life.
You're struggling. Soon becomes later, becomes someday, becomes when. Don't wait. Reach out.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Recovery of Tampa? Well, they offer a profound, all-embracing approach to addiction treatment. With a dedicated team of empathetic professionals, Riverside Recovery is committed to guiding individuals on their path to enduring recovery, using a variety of science-backed therapies, counseling, and support services. Riverside Recovery values the individuality of every recovery journey. Their tailored treatment plans respond to the specific needs, the hurdles, the goals of each resident, providing effective aid regardless of whether you're taking your first steps in recovery or maintaining your progress. With Riverside, recovery isn't just achievable, it's an influential journey towards a healthier, brighter future. The testimonials of those who've undergone treatment there are evidence of rediscovered self-worth and potential. Located on the tranquil Hillsborough River of Tampa, Riverside serves as a peaceful haven, promoting self-discovery and healing. They acknowledge that recovery is about more than just overcoming difficulties. It's also about finding your innate strength and resilience. The Riverside Recovery's committed team are your empathetic allies in your recovery journey. They comprehend that genuine healing involves the mind, the body, and the spirit, meticulously dealing with all facets of addiction. You can discover more at rrtampa.com. That's rrtampa.com. Or reach out at 1-800-871-5440. That's 800-871-5440. 800-871-5440 or rrtampa.com.
You can tweet us anytime on X at Reboot Your Life.
Life 2.0. It's your life and your reboot. It's Reboot Your Life with Cary Harrison.
She's 100% become part of the family. Although it took a few months, it's nice to see how she's finally grown into her own here, and she recognizes that this is home and no longer just a pit stop in a journey that she doesn't know that she's on.
Hi, I'm Shane Brendan. As a veteran, I understand how objects we brought back from service can be so meaningful. They can remind us why we served and what we did, or help us transition back to civilian life. Today I talk with a veteran whose object isn't so much a thing as it is, well, a special friend.
Hey, thanks for sitting down with me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Tell the folks a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, and how you ended up in the service.
My name's Amjad Kirish, AJ for short. I've been in the Air Force now for 10 and a half years. I'm attached to Army combat units, and I coordinate and direct airstrikes for them. Most recently, I was deployed in Syria in Operation Inherent Resolve.
Deployment is hard on anyone. So what was your mindset in the early days of getting in and just trying to get acquainted to just being in Syria?
The biggest stresses for me was the responsibility I had of controlling multi-million-dollar aircrafts, employing thousands of pounds of bombs, all while ensuring that no civilian casualties, no collateral damage, and no friendly forces were negatively impacted by it. And having all that responsibility coupled with just the crappiness that comes with a deployed environment. Little things that we take for granted, like running water, showering, and toilet facilities that are decent. And I'm sure you experience it downrange where the shower curtain like touches your leg and you freak out. Yeah, you now have to wash yourself in acid because the shower curtain just touched your leg.
How'd you meet Harley? How'd Harley come into your life?
Once I got on the camp, the team had actually already rescued Harley. They were out on patrol. They ended up finding her at one of the Bedouin camps, and she was just the last puppy of her litter. Things weren't looking too good for her to actually survive. So they brought her onto the camp. It was nice to see her when I first got there because all you have is this 2-month-old puppy full of energy just running around. All she wanted to do was say hi to everyone. I just started getting closer and closer to her. That attachment happens all the time, and I think a lot of times is because of the environment. It's usually high stress. You end up seeing what people are willing to do to each other. You do become callous. Having Harley kind of alleviated that. Seeing something so innocent, this pup that just wants to play, she just wants to... You give her a treat and she's now your best friend.
I want to talk a little bit about actually getting Harley out of Syria.
I actually went with her out of Syria into Jordan, and this was all during COVID. So Jordan had completely shut down all their airports. So the Al-Amal Foundation kept her in the sanctuary for 2 months.
Oh, wow. Now, how was that for you? Did you start to feel a little anxious or maybe just second guessing of whether or not you would actually be able to, get her stateside?
The biggest issue is actually when she arrived in New York. The CDC had denied her entry, stating that there was a clerical error in her vaccinations and her paperwork, and the CDC wanted her to be sent back to the Middle East right away. Just the what ifs started flowing through my head, and it was not a good feeling. The organization Pause the War reached out to the media, and we started doing this media campaign, and the outpouring of support was amazing. Every major news organization got involved.
Tonight, a plea from a veteran who rescued a puppy from overseas, Harley.
And started putting the story out there of how this veteran who saved this puppy was being denied. When I did finally see her, it was nerve-wracking at first, thinking, I hope she recognizes me.
Yeah.
Opened the door, and she was a little cautious at first, but immediately after she recognized me, and it was such a joy to see her, for her to recognize me. And then I took her to the back, and her favorite game is just to play chase. So just grabbed something, threw it, and she ran around. I chased her, and it was like we didn't skip a beat. It was kind of a sigh of relief to feel like, okay, it's done. She's home now.
What's up, little lady? Oh, wow. She's big. How old is she now?
She is a little over a year. The deployment will still be the deployment. Coming home will always still be coming home. But I can't imagine what it would have been like had Harley stayed. I would have always had that what if, or where's she at? Is she okay? Is she still alive? And so Harley coming home, it felt like the deployment was finally over and closed, and it was a happy ending as opposed to a what if ending. Not knowing what would have happened to Harley would have just crushed me, so having her home, it was perfect. I can't imagine a life without her.
Do you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS?
Then get on board with the Tax Admiral and let us steer your way to financial freedom.
Helping people clean up their mess with the IRS.
If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS, are facing an audit, a lien, or levy, then call me right away. You're in charge with the Tax Admiral. Call me now for your free emergency consultation.
Call 855-898-0188.
We know the pressure you feel.
They say there are no excuses.
They say to just push hard.
They say to just go faster.
But when we're on the field, they don't know what's going on inside us.
How hard is too hard?
When do we get support?
When do we raise our hand and ask for help?
How are we supposed to feel good in here when that's happening out there?
We need each other.
Love. Your mind.
Innovation transforms the world, moving us forward not just in steps, but in leaps and bounds. Innovation created a healthcare system so extraordinary, it not only improves the lives of veterans, it transforms the lives of healthcare professionals, collaborating through integrated care teams, accessing the latest technology, working with the most advanced medical science, and even creating it. Like discovering new ways to integrate technology with the human body. It's a unique culture of transformation that leads to solutions that best serve our veterans, the Department of Veterans Affairs, where innovation ensures those who served our nation are served by the very best. See how a career at VA can transform your future.
Learn more at rrtampa.com. Reboot your life today.